Welcome back to another episode of the NetOps Expert. I am very happy to be joined today by Jason Normandin, part of the DX NetOps product management team. Jason, welcome.
Thank you, Jeremy. Happy to be here.
Great. And once again, my name is Jeremy Rosbach. I lead the DX NetOps product marketing team. And today, we are talking about the experience-driven NOC. And that may be new to everybody, but first and foremost, as the title of this episode says, I want to welcome everyone to the experience-driven NOC. Jason and I are going to talk about what the experience-driven NOC is, why it's important, why it's needed today, and why Broadcom leads the industry in this new innovation around user experience network delivery. So Jason, I want to start off with the very first question we have. Why do you think it's so important for today's operations teams to focus on the user experience? I mean, don't they have application teams for that?
Absolutely. They do certainly have application teams for that. And this question is not new. It's a question that's been in the industry forever. And it's been in the industry as long as there's been a division within the IT organizations of having network teams, infrastructure teams, and application teams. There's a lot of finger pointing that goes on for sure. And guess where the finger starts? It always starts at the network because that's that's the easiest target. So it really is a responsibility for the network operations team to prove their innocence, if you will, to be able to understand the experience across the network, because at the end of the day, they're providing those resources to deliver those application experiences. So if they're able to provide visibility to the applications teams when there is an issue that is not being impacted by network, well, that's going to provide a much faster triage experience, and that's going to it's going to put the ball in the right court and to the right team to be able to address the issue. Now, if it is a network issue, that visibility will be apparent with the tools that we're providing with the AppNeta interface and the NetOps portal. We're going to allow operations to be able to easily view that network experience, drill down to where those hotspots may be, identify the root cause, or identify that innocence factor, right? That mean time to innocence that we talk so much about. Basically, get the ball out of our court. There's nothing we can do to help your application. You need to take care of it.
And I know we're going to get into showing some of that workflow that you just talked about, but this is a sub-question of that just came to me is, we've talked about this before on previous NetOps Expert episodes, but what do you think's happening in our world today, even over the past few years, that is driving the need to focus on experience inside of network operations teams?
Well, it's really a lack of control by the operations teams. The networks that their enterprise users and the users are traversing are no longer fully owned by these operations teams, right? It's no longer within the four walls of the data center. The days of accessing applications through a VPN connectivity into my data center, those still exist, but they're shrinking minority of the use cases. It really is about SaaS applications and cloud resources. And that infrastructure is virtually invisible to the operations team. So they really are at a disadvantage. And that's where that finger pointing comes in once again, because they can't prove that the issue is in my AT&T or Comcast internet connection. It's just looking like, hey, the traffic's not getting there reliably or performing.
Yeah, to expand on that, and I definitely have talked about this with others in past episodes, but we see stats out there. Of course, the pandemic has drove a lot of work from anywhere, work from home scenarios for every company and enterprise out there. But then, the proliferation of moving workloads out of the four walls of the data center to cloud environments, to SaaS environments, we're all in the middle of it, right? We're using Office 365, we're using Microsoft Teams. Jason, you and I think you and I, honestly, this transmission that we're doing right now, this WebEx, this recording, if you think about the entire network path of this user experience that you and I are in the middle of right now, it's probably not even entering a data center. It starts from my home office through my wireless router, out through my Verizon Fios residential connection, over however many backhaul transit routing ISPs, and then into the Google Cloud, which is where Broadcom hosts most of our software and stuff like that. I didn't mention a private data center anywhere in there. And like you mentioned, where is the control? I mean, network operations teams, they're not gods of any hop in that network path anymore. I can't even imagine what that's like, and definitely proves your point. And I can't wait to get into what we're going to show our customers on this episode here, where we can provide them that visibility they don't have today. So All right, you queue up your demo, and this next question is definitely going to be important to that. I know a lot of customers ask us, what's the importance of routing user experience metrics through their standard operating procedures? And I know you know that term very well. NetOps has standard operating procedures, right? They have a way to start troubleshooting. They ping, they trace route, they telnet or shell into a configuration of a device and look for any changes. And so how do we incorporate user experience metrics into their day-to-day triage steps?
Well, the important part is to integrate this technology with the other technologies that are being monitored. It's really impossible to do this type of analysis in isolation, right? So I need to be able to understand the experience alongside all of my other technologies, which means we can't have different SOPs or different ways to interact with different types of alarms. We need to be able to follow standard practices, and with our NetOps solution, we really work hard to provide those consistent usability patterns that operation teams can learn once, can easily train new engineers. We know there's high turnover in L1 operation organizations. Easily train and not have to rely on subject matter experts to solve all their problems.
All right, why don't you show us what that looks like?
Sure.
Excellent.
So what we're looking here is our NetOps alarm console. This is going to provide that real-time visibility into all the problems that are occurring within my network. This is going to include that experience information, as well as just standard monitoring that I'm doing, looking at interface discards, looking at QoS metrics, and being able to do that correlation. So it's really important again to unify that data. So what we're looking at here is examples of some integration experience alarms that we have. The first I want to talk about today is how change impacts delivery and experience. So we certainly know today, as I'm accessing an application that's hosted by a third party or an application hosted in a cloud, I'm traversing the internet in almost all those instances, as we just talked about. Things are going to change on that connectivity. I don't expect to have a consistent hop by hop path for that communication. I expect that to change because I don't control what's going on. My ISPs are implementing changes, and there's routing changes, and it's nothing but change consistently. So that's important that we manifest that to the operations, but in a way that doesn't overwhelm them with noise. So one of the things that AppNeta does great is it's consistently monitoring the hop by hop topology for all of my network experience paths. This is giving visibility to the operator of what devices are being hit across those WAN connections. So again, we expect that to change, but there can be too much change. We look at an old example of interface flapping where it's consistently changing between two states. Well, we can run into similar situations with the routes that traffic is taking. So one of the alarms that we've implemented some intelligence around is looking at network change events. So instead of flooding the operator, as I mentioned, with numerous alarms every time something happens, we only want to provide them with interesting information. So we look for patterns, or we look for consistency in those changes. So in this first event, we can see that we have a network change event, and the network change event has occurred multiple times. So we can have basically indication to say that an excessive number of changes, in this instance is greater than 11 in an hour, which essentially means every time we check, there's a change, then we want to raise an alarm. That's to provide visibility, not necessarily indicative of a problem, but to raise operational awareness that, hey, there's consistently change going on here. And then as we can look to eventually in the future, correlate that to performance, that's going to give the operations team the ability to understand how those changes are actually impacting the end user experience. Now, from a workflow perspective, in NetOps, we have a couple of ways that you can engage. One of them would be to drill into the performance view and understand how the performance of that path is occurring over time. And the second is actually to dig in and take a look at the actual path changes over time. So if I select this link here, I can drill into my AppNeta tool and get a clear view of the delivery of that particular path over time. I can see in real time the most recent route that this path is taking, including basic TCP, UDP, and ICMP. There's certainly going to be differences. And where the problems are detected, I can then drill in and do a deeper route analysis to understand the hop by hop performance over time of this particular path. You can see here the hops for my ISP. totally locked up the scrolling. But I can see I can track this over time. And more importantly, I can then drill in and get an understanding of if I'm experiencing latency or if the connection is not reliable, if it's dropping out. I can identify where that problem is occurring. So we have our round trip time for each hop within that path. And again, the vast majority of these systems are beyond visibility of that operations team. So there's no other way for them to gain insight into this visibility. And this is one of those examples where if I'm having poor application performance and it happens to be related to a device in the Comcast backbone, I can't prove that without this type of information. So I'm going to sit here chasing my tail while my SLA meter keeps ticking and the application team keeps chasing me. This gives me the information I need to be able to very quickly understand how that traffic is traversing those connections that I don't really have access to. Another example I want to talk about is related to performance. Now, being able to troubleshoot connectivity issues is certainly one thing. Performance issues get a little more tricky, certainly to troubleshoot. So we really try to make that simple for the users. So I want to show an example, and I'm going to weave in another concept, and this concept is related to what we're doing around baselining, or what we call deviation from normal. So here we see a particular trap raised against, a particular alarm raised against one of our paths, and this is indicating that there is a large deviation in my round trip time. This happens to be taking advantage of a few aspects of NetOps, including the ability to determine a percentage of the baseline that I want to that I care about when it exceeds. In this example, you can see plus 50% of my baseline, as well as the time window. So in this example, I'm basically saying, hey, if the round trip time for this path is 50% greater than it normally is for a half hour out of 1 hour, I want to raise an alarm. This gives the operator then the ability to go and drill in to identify that abnormal behavior. I can very quickly navigate to the metrics of interest, in this example, utilization performance, and then I can drill into that round trip time. And you can see here how we're providing simple visibility so the operators don't have to do guessing work, right? So we have this indicator of what quote unquote normal behavior is, these green bars. We call them the green highway, but it just simply reflects the normal operating range of this particular metric for this particular path. You can see here how we can raise the alarms when the threshold has occurred, and it's simple for then the operators to drill in and be able to identify where that problem is. You can also take advantage of other capabilities. If I want to look back further, maybe expand that to 8 hours, very simple to do. And now just like that, I've been able to even expand further upon understanding how that value has changed over time and how it deviates from what we consider to be a normal pattern for that particular path. In this example, obviously the round trip time isn't too high, and in a normal application, probably not an issue. But if we're looking at low latency switching or use cases that require very, very precise timings, well, then these types of rules become extremely important. For user application, maybe we have different rules. Maybe it's 200% of baseline for an hour out of 2 hours. It's really up to the use case and really giving our customers the ability to customize that experience to meet their specific needs, which we know vary from customer to customer based off of all our experience.
Jason, that was great. You really showed the importance of why user experience is critical to understanding network delivery impact on it, especially the easy workflows to find the source of any performance degradation, and especially inside of networks that our customers have no visibility into, like ISP or cloud. You talked about baselining and deviation from normal, but why is the need for baselining and understanding past and future predictions important to the user experience network delivery right now?
All apps are not created equal, right? We can start there. There's going to be different tolerances for different types of applications. If I'm looking at voice data, well, then jitter becomes extraordinarily important. If I'm looking at high volume switching, well, then latency becomes extraordinarily important. So there's different metrics that I need to look at, but there's not a consistent operational threshold for these because, again, they're not all created equal. So it's more along the lines of what's normal and what's acceptable for a particular application, for a particular set of users. So we want to really highlight when that becomes abnormal. It's a very common triage process, right? Okay, something's going wrong. Is it normally going wrong, or is it happening always at this particular time of day, right? Being able to drive those insights into this is really outside the normal boundaries of how something is typically performing, is really going to give operations the ability to then focus, like a laser focus, their triage exercises to kind of drill in and understand what's going on there. So again, it's about making sure that we're comparing apples to apples, making sure that we're different applications are going to have different performance characteristics. What's normal is what's important. As long as normal is acceptable, but what's normal is important. So when we get large deviations, that's when it's indicative of a potential problem.
Jason, this was great. Thank you so much for helping us walk through a experience-driven workflow when it relates to network delivery, performance degradation. This is a really, really exciting time, not only for you and I mean, to have the inclusion of AppNeta into our network monitoring family, to extend our visibility beyond the edge of the network into these unmanaged networks like ISP, cloud, even my home wireless, to look at the health of my home wireless because the degradation could be there. Just an exciting time for us, and especially an exciting time for our customers as well. So Jason, again, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you, Jeremy.
And we will be back with another episode of the NetOps Expert. Stay tuned.